When bad performances happen, you drop tomatoes. I dropped a liter of tomato juice because I want her to be full of blood, because that's what she's advocating for. She's advocating for our genocide. And I want her to be full of blood. We want to remind her that she's advocating for our extermination. We're going to start with that all together. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I am a prevention violence minister, and I know who causes violence in the world. It is white cis men.
Yeah,
that is white cis men.
Okay, but so what is a woman?
I am a prevention violence minister, and I know who causes violence in the world. It is white cis men.
Yeah,
that is white cis men.
Okay, but so what is a woman?
Davidson made some comments over the weekend saying, I know who causes violence in the world, it is cis white men. What do you make of that?
I understand Marama has subsequently issued a clarification. I think we do need to consider the context in which she made her remarks. She'd just been hit by a motorcycle and was basically being harassed by a right-wing conspiracy group as she went down the road. That's not a form of words that I would choose, and I understand from her statement it wasn't what she meant to say.
Are you proud as Prime Minister of what unfolded at Albert Park on Saturday?
I think all New Zealanders respect the right to free speech. They respect the right to disagree with each other. Nobody in these situations should ever resort to violence to convey the view that they are trying to put forward. I don't believe people should throw things at a protest, whether what they're throwing is a soup or a brick. Ultimately, the right to free speech does not extend to the right to physical violence, and so I would condemn that regardless of who's engaging in that type of activity. I think what we did. I think what we did.
That those women were left to their own devices, and police who were nearby didn't move in to help them or protect them.
I think what we did see over the weekend, though, was a significant number of New Zealanders exercising their right to free speech, doing so in a way that was respectful and that was about supporting other fellow New Zealanders. And I think that that is something that we should celebrate. As I've said, I'll never support people who resort to violence. In terms of the police response, that's, I think, as we've well canvassed in this room over the last week or two, that's not something that ministers should give direction on. Those are ultimately questions for the police. Jessica.
Prime Minister Marama Davidson is a minister. Do you have higher expectations of her comments than that?
Like I said, she'd just been hit by a motorcycle. I think I don't expect perfection from people, and particularly not when they've just experienced a trauma like that. She subsequently clarified her words, and I accept the clarification that she has given.
Have you spoken to her about it?
I haven't spoken to her directly about the form of words that she used that came to light this morning. I did have a text conversation with her over the weekend when I discovered that she was at A&E. I didn't speak to her on the phone because I know, when you're sitting at A&E, a whole lot of phone calls isn't necessarily the thing that you want right at that moment, but I did have a conversation with her co-leader, James Shaw, who was in regular contact with her.
In that conversation with James Shaw, did you express that it was what you wanted was for her to take back the comments or at least rephrase them?
As I've indicated, the conversations we had weren't about those. Those came to light subsequent to those conversations that we had. I know through my office there have been conversations this morning with Marama in her office. The words that she chose were not the message that she was trying to convey, and she subsequently clarified that.
Was it your office and your officials that asked her or her officials to come out with the statement and to use different language?
Certainly think it's appropriate that she clarified the statement that she made and clarified the
Did
words and
you
clarified
ask
what
her to do that?
she meant. Well, as I've said, I wasn't, it was my office rather than me speaking to her directly. But I certainly, my expectation as Prime Minister would be when someone has said something which has been interpreted in a way that they had not intended, that they should clarify that as soon as possible.
Has there been a reprimand or more a suggestion not to use that generalisation language in the future? Like, what's your message as Prime Minister?
Well, I certainly don't think it was appropriate, but I think in the circumstances, I think some leeway should be given to someone saying something which on reflection they felt didn't convey what they were intending to convey. I think that's what's happened in these circumstances.
And was that message given from your office before she released your statement?
Almost certainly.
So
Clear.
you as Prime Minister asked her to walk it
Labor
back.
ministers not to attend those events?
No,
Did any of them go?
I'm not sure.
Can we just clarify? Your officials asked Marama Davidson's officials to walk back the comments. That's what happened.
I asked, through my office, made it clear to her that I think it would be beneficial if she was able to clarify what it was she was intending to say, because my understanding was that when it came to my attention, my understanding is that it had already been conveyed to me and to my office that the words that she had used were not what she was intending to say.
Was there an apology for not upholding ministerial standards?
As I've said, I don't expect perfection, and I do think we should acknowledge the fact that she had just been hit by a motorcycle.
So you don't
yeah.
Prime
From her
Minister.
office about changing the wording?
What was that?
Was there any pushback from her office about?
Not to my knowledge, no. I don't believe so.
Can you explain what she was intending to say, please?
What was that?
What was she intending
Well,
to
she's
say?
issued a clarifying statement. I think the point that she was trying to make was that the majority of sexual violence in New Zealand is conducted by men, and that our transgender community are often the victims of that. I think that's a perfectly appropriate thing to point out. There are facts to support that. Clearly, those are not the words that she chose to use, though.
Where did the white cis men come in?
As I've said, I don't think that was appropriate.
On the incident where Marama was struck by the motorbike, do you have any comments about that and I guess the broader political scene and increasing incidents of violence and heading into election?
Yeah, as I've indicated, I'll never condone violence when it comes to expressing one's opinion. I think it's important that we allow in New Zealand free speech and that we allow people to say things that might be unpopular. Violence shouldn't come into it.
I've spoken to
Are
a
you
family violence
concerned
advocate.
in election year about politicians facing violence like this?
I think we're seeing around the world, and New Zealand is not isolated from this, a greater degree of sort of polarisation amongst some parts of the community. I would like to think that we can still hold in New Zealand an election that's free and fair, where people can express their views and people can go out and engage with their fellow New Zealanders, where campaigns can be conducted in the open way that we have in the past. Obviously, we need to be cautious about making sure that everybody's kept safe in that process. But we have had, good open campaigns in New Zealand in the past. I would hope that we can find at least a way to ensure that the majority of that can continue to happen.
Support James Shaw's renewed calls for a cross-party group, preferably led by the government, that he renewed last week, to meet ahead of the campaign to discuss security issues, threats, anything that might need to be done in the campaign in light of increased political violence?
I'm certainly open to conversations with all of the political parties about how we can ensure that everybody's kept safe during the campaign. We have seen an increased number of incidents in recent times, the last few years. James Shaw himself was the victim of one of those. And I don't think any one of us should find that acceptable. So I'm certainly open to those conversations.
Can you give an assurance to the...
No, I'll let Joe finish.
Okay,
Yeah.
then I'll ask one.
Do you think what we saw at the weekend is an example, I guess, of that increased political violence in terms of both the protests but also, potentially what happened with Marama Davidson as well? Does that not only, I guess, highlight the need for some discussions to be had in that space?
I don't want to make a comment on the specific incident because my understanding is that that now sits with the police and they'll be investigating. Video footage has been sent to them. And again, as we've canvassed in the last few weeks, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on that specific incident. But overall, I think it's important here in New Zealand that we try and conduct our politics in a way that does allow people to get out there and engage and talk to one another in a way that's safe and that's respectful.
Can you give a general assurance to Posie Parker and to Marama Davidson and to all the other women assaulted in Albert Park on Saturday that given the huge amount of video evidence that police will investigate and prosecute whomever is responsible for any assault that day?
Those decisions are matters for the Commissioner of Police.
Would you like to think that they will, Prime Minister?
Those are decisions for the Commissioner of Police.
What do you make of the Posie Parker protest on Saturday?
Well, from a policing perspective, if you have someone that is trying to exercise their freedom of speech and doing a public event like that and they're assaulted, then there's been a failure. It sends a terrible message because in this country we should really defend and protect our freedom of speech. And we say, whether you agree with the person and what they're saying is irrelevant. And so there should have been better protection to ensure that there wasn't that type of violence and assault.
Are you saying there's a failure on police's part?
From the police's point of view, is that if they're present and they knew the event was happening, they should have been planning for that. And because someone was actually assaulted at it, it means that they have failed in making sure that that event could have actually gone forward.
Do you think there was enough police there?
Does that mean there needs to be some kind of consequence for the police? What would you do in this situation?
I would hope that the police are doing a serious review of what happened there. And I think they need to be very clear about how they're going to deal with future events, how they're going to ensure people's safety, both from the protesters' side of it and also from the people that are actually holding the event, the public event.
You've just made quite a startling statement there. You've said the police have failed. What makes you think that?
Well, because someone was assaulted. The person that was there, it was obviously well signalled. I would assume that the police had done a fair bit of planning around it. They should have had a lot of intelligence to inform them in terms of what they had to do. And someone's been assaulted. So, in this country, my expectation is that the police do all that they can and use every power that they have to make sure that someone can go out in public and actually speak about an issue and that their safety can be assured.
Which assault are you talking about?
Pardon?
Which assault are you talking about?
Well, the assault on the female, the lady that held the event.
The tomato soup.
Pardon? Yes, that is an assault. Make no mistake. I have got. Can you imagine if any of us walked up to someone else and started pouring fluid? And by the way, she would have had no idea what it was. That is traumatic. We shouldn't accept it, and it is absolutely an assault.
Should Chris Hipkins make sure that the police prosecute the person who did that?
In my view, absolutely. My expectations is that the police obviously investigate it. They will make their own decisions in terms of how they deal with it, whether it's a prosecution, whether it's an alternative action. I don't know, but it's very obvious that it was all caught on tape, so there's plenty of evidence.
But you think the Prime Minister should make the police prosecute?
Oh no, that's not up to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's got no.
But that's what you just said to Mark. You said
you
want to make sure
whether the Prime Minister should make sure the person's prosecuted. The person's well known. The police haven't reached out to them yet.
Sorry, let me be clear. I thought you were saying should the police prosecute. My expectation is that the police definitely take some action on it. No, it's not appropriate for the Prime Minister or the Minister of Police or anyone else or any other minister to tell the police whether or not they should prosecute.
You've just successfully called for a police minister's head because they interfered in a police investigation, and now you're coming out here saying that the Prime Minister should get involved.
Okay, so let me just be clear again. I misunderstood the question. I thought the question was should the police prosecute. I missed the fact that should the Prime Minister tell the police to prosecute. Let me be very clear. No, the Prime Minister should not tell the police to prosecute. It is the police's decision. My expectation is the police have got a lot of evidence there and they should be looking seriously at what their options are and their actions are.
Should you be telling the police that they should be prosecuting? You're not bound by the Cabinet Manual, of course, but you are an MP.
No, but again, that is an operational issue for the police.
But you've just said you want them to prosecute.
Well, I would expect them to have all the evidence that they have in front of them and then take a decision on what action is going to be taken. In my view, in this country, when there is an obvious assault like that takes place, the expectation is the police are the one agency that have got the powers to be able to take action on it, and my expectation is that they do take some action. What that action is entirely up to them.
Would you pass the Stuart Nash test? If you were the minister, would you be able to keep your fingers out of it?
Well, I'm not the minister. I'm the opposition spokesperson. So
you seem to have a lot of opinions on police prosecutions.
If I was the minister, then I'd expect to be held to those standards. I have been a minister. I take the cabinet manual seriously. Stuart Nash put the commissioner in a bad position, and he didn't understand himself that he'd even breached the cabinet manual. Let me be really clear: is that in this country, we need to be able to defend and protect the freedom of speech. So if you want to go out, or I want to go out, and we want to talk about something, even if it's not popular or people don't agree with it, they should be able to do that without being accosted and assaulted. And that's something that we should defend in all measure in this country. The police are the only agency that have got the powers and the ability to investigate and take action. And my expectation is that they exercise those rights and those powers, and that they do something, because if we start to go down a road in this country where we accept that and we say that's the norm, then we're going to start to dampen and start to kill off our freedom of speech, and that's something that we should all be concerned about.
Were there enough cops there? Were there enough cops at the protest?
Pardon?
Were there enough cops at the protest?
I don't know. That was an operational decision for the police, and I can't comment on that.
But you want to have a review? Like, you want them to look at what they did?
No, my expectation is that they will have a review, is that they're going to review it, and they're going to ensure that the next one, they're able to respond better to it.